Lesson D3, Deviance. While modern industrial societies tend to be fairly multicultural, and individuals can be more accepting of people who deviate from their own cultural norms, social influences often lead us to conform to the behavior of the group around us. Yet clearly, we don't always follow the crowd. Sometimes we even break the law or harm one another directly. Violence overall has decreased in many modern societies, but it still happens. Why? And why doesn't it happen more often? Social deviance isn't just what some people would consider evil doings. It's any behavior that does not conform to group norms or expectations. High schoolers using illegal drugs or drinking are breaking legal formal norms. But those same adolescents might consider someone in the nerd subculture deviant to their informal norms of activity and style. Deviance also depends on the norms of a certain status, so a male man might be seen as deviant for wearing a dress, which would be seen as normal for a female woman, while someone with the status of woman might be seen as deviant for being too muscular, which would be normal for a man. Even looking different than most of the people around you might be seen as deviant. There are few, if any, behaviors which would be considered deviant in every possible group and a situation. Deviance is a social construction. Whether you call something weird or wrong depends on your reference group. Authorities abusing their power would be considered deviant by many, yet exposing such abuse might be considered deviant by those within the authority group, such as police. You could be a good student in your teacher's eyes, yet be seen as deviant by your peers. Labeling theory says it's not so much what you do, but how people react that defines a behavior as deviant. Citizens in Gotham might cheer for Batman, calling him a hero, while the police might try to arrest him, labeling him a criminal. If you've ever broken a traffic law and no one noticed, you know the power of labeling. It's the cop pulling you over that begins your informal labeling as deviant, which may disappear if you can talk your way out of a formal ticket or arrest. We label deviant behavior in many different ways. Deviance from informal norms or behavior might be called weird, while deviating from formal norms of religion or in ways that cause harm might be seen as immoral. The police generally get involved only when you're deviating from formal norms of law, which we call criminal activity, although there are many exceptions to this. There are many different types of crimes, which we label differently depending on whether they harm the person directly or simply their property. Robbery is both, as it involves both stealing and physical threat. Crimes are also labeled differently depending on where they happen, in the home, public spaces, or in a job, and by the status of the person committing the crime. Even the intention of the criminal changes how their action is labeled. For instance, a hate crime is one which is committed because of a victim's social status. Deviance has long been considered a personality problem. If you do something bad, it's because you're a bad person. But as modern society becomes more accepting of deviance, and our understanding of psychology improves, we increasingly label deviance as a medical issue. If your kid isn't doing their homework, we might react by giving them Adderall or other drugs, rather than punishing them. You're not a drunk, you're an alcoholic. Alcohol is chemically addictive, so this medicalization of deviance prevents blaming, but it can also degrade individual responsibility, or even individual freedom. Whether and however we label a particular behavior as deviant, there has always been deviance. Functionalism, taking the macro-level view that common social structures help keep society stable, says it must have a purpose. When many people label someone's behavior as deviant, it can bring them together and strengthen group bonds. It also reminds others what our society expects. But society must adapt and progress, and if everyone always conformed to traditional norms, society would never evolve. So one person's deviance today might lead to tomorrow's norms. But what leads some people to deviate more than others? More extreme deviance can be directly harmful to other people, and this is the level of deviance that we'll be mostly focusing on in this lesson. Recent scientific discoveries support the medicalization of some deviant behaviors by showing the role nature or biology plays. Head injuries can cause dramatic changes in behavior and personality. The frontal lobe helps us control our behavior, and there is a disproportionately high number of violent criminals with brain damage from child abuse. The amygdala controls our instinctive fight or flight reactions and has been found to be larger than average in some criminals. Testosterone is linked to aggression, and the average hormonal differences help explain the higher rates of violence among some males. But females can be aggressive as well, and most criminals have normal brains. Many who do have natural abnormalities lead normal lives. So what role does nurture play in creating deviance? We've already seen that role modeling our significant others helps socialize us, and that we tend to conform to the group around us. So if the people we associate with have different norms and values than the dominant culture, their culture may diffuse into us. Differential association theory says we learn deviant values and norms from the people around us, who also give us the cultural capital and social capital we need to successfully commit deviant or criminal acts. When Simba's old friend Nala finds him in the jungle, he seems deviant to lion norms because of his resocializing by Timon and Pumbaa. Perhaps it's Scar's association with the hyenas that leads to his deviant behavior. But we've all probably known people who commit deviant acts that we do not conform to. And what led Scar to friendship with the segregated hyenas to begin with? Perhaps Scar became deviant because that was the only way he saw to achieve his goals. After all, king is a highly valued status, but formal norms of the royal institution say only the eldest son of the king takes the throne. He experienced a role strain between his cultural goal of being king and the culturally normal means available to achieve it. Strain theory points out the problems that can come from a lack of opportunities. We choose to conform because we believe that by social exchange we'll be better off than if we deviate. Yet there may be times when it seems difficult or impossible to achieve our goals in the normal, acceptable way. Conformity is easy if we see a normal path to success available. But if we feel a strain between what we're supposed to achieve and how we're supposed to achieve it, there are several ways to react. If we give up on larger goals, we may fall into ritualism, following the rules itself as our goal. Alternatively, rather than giving up on the goals, we could innovate by taking deviant opportunities to achieve our goals of money, power, or popularity. If we give up on both goals and norms, we might retreat from society by falling into addiction or isolation. But there's another option too. If we reject the dominant cultural norms and goals, we could rebel by creating whole new values for success and how to achieve it. This is where countercultures come in. So do people commit more deviant acts when they lack normal means of success? Strain theory is somewhat supported by evidence showing that crime rates tend to go up where there is a greater gap between rich and poor. Higher unemployment implies that people can't find normal work, and we see that the unemployment rate in Detroit has often correlated with a rise in robbery rates, but not always. And most poor people obey the law as much as anyone. So why do we see people who are already in high positions committing crimes? White-collar criminals may not be poor, but they're not as rich as they could be. In a society that values hierarchical success, there's always more to be achieved and temptations to deviate.